Hey guys, it's Strange here, your boy from Dirty Hollywood, the one place on the internet where the stars can't hide anymore. I'm sitting right here, in this dim little room, lights low, just me and you, and I got something that's gonna make your jaw drop straight to the floor. Picture this. It's 2006, a cold February night on Netflix, and this brand new docuseries called Reality Check drops like a bomb nobody saw coming. America's Next Top Model, the show we all grew up glued to. The one Tyra Banks sold us as this empowering dream factory for girls who wanted to be on top. Yeah, that show. The one that just got its ugly guts spilled out for the whole world to see. And right there, in the first 10 minutes, you hear it. Raw audio from behind the scenes, a contestant's voice cracking as she whispers into a hidden mic. I was blackout drunk. I couldn't even stand. And they filmed the whole thing like it was entertainment. Wait for it, because that's not even the half of it. Let me take you back, real slow, like we are walking through the crime scene together. Because that's exactly what this is. A decade and a half of calculated cruelty, dressed up in runway lights and Tyra's fake ass, we were all rooting for you smile. I've dug through every leaked clip from that doc, every old interview, every court whisper, every deleted tweet that never quite got scrapped, and the picture that's coming together, it's darker than any of us thought. This wasn't just bad reality TV. This was a machine that chewed up young women, broke, hopeful, desperate for a shot, and spit them out, traumatized, broke, and branded as villains, while Tyra counted her millions and smiled for the cameras. And the new docuseries, it didn't just confirm it, it lit the whole damn thing on fire with receipts. But before we get to the blood on the floor, we gotta start at the beginning, the way every good true crime story does. Because to understand how America's Next Top Model became this monster, you gotta know the monster who built it. Tyra Banks. Yeah, the supermodel we all thought was the girl next door who made it big. Let's reconstruct her story the way it really went down, not the glossy version she peddled on every talk show. Born December 4th, 1973 in Inglewood, California. Not exactly the hood, but not Beverly Hills either. Mom was a medical photographer. Dad was a computer consultant. But the marriage blew up when Tyra was just 6. Divorce hit hard. Little Tyra, tall and awkward for her age, getting picked on at school for being too skinny, too dark, too everything. She's talked about it in old interviews. Kids calling her ugly, teachers not seeing her potential. But she was smart, ambitious, and by the time she hit high school, she was already modeling. Signed with a big agency at 17, moved to Paris, worked for Chanel, Versace, the whole circuit. She became the first black woman on the cover of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue in 1996, the first black Victoria's Secret angel. She was breaking barriers, or so the narrative went. But behind the gloss, people who knew her back then, insiders who still won't go on record, but whispered to me through back channels, say Tyra was already learning the game the hard way. The industry chewed her up too. Agents telling her to lose weight even when she was a size 6. Photographers treating her like a prop. Executives reminding her she was exotic, but not the default beauty. So when she hit her late 20s and the bookings started slowing, she did what every smart player in Hollywood does. She flipped the script and created her own empire. 2003. Tyra sitting in a UPN conference room, back when UPN still existed, pitching this idea to execs who were hungry for the next survivor. GK, she calls it America's Next Top Model. It's gonna be educational, she says in one of those old pitch tapes that somehow leaked years later. We're gonna teach girls how to model, how to survive the industry. Bullshit. We all know that's bullshit now. What she really wanted was control, ratings, and a brand that would keep her relevant when the runway lights dimmed. She teamed up with producer Ken Mock, brought in Jay Manuel as creative director, Miss J. Alexander and Nigel Barker as judges, and boom, Cycle 1 drops in May 2003. 12 girls locked in a house in New York, competing for a contract with a top agency, a magazine spread, the whole fantasy, ratings went through the roof. America ate it up, and Tyra she became the star, the loving mentor, the tough love mama, the one who cried with the girls and screamed at them in the same breath. But let's be real for a second. From day one, the cracks were there if you knew where to look. I watched every cycle, every deleted scene, every bonus feature that got buried, and the pattern was baked in from the jump. These weren't professional models. These were 19, 20-year-old girls from small towns, broken homes, dead-end jobs. Some had never even been on a plane before. They signed contracts that basically gave the production full rights to their bodies, their stories, their breakdowns. No intimacy coordinators, no real therapist on set, just cameras rolling 24/7 and producers poking at every insecurity like it was fresh meat. Cycle 1. Adrienne Carey wins, but even she later said in interviews the house was a pressure cooker. The makeovers? Brutal. They'd shave heads, dye hair platinum, glue on fake teeth, all while telling the girls this is what the industry wants. This is what the industry wants. And Tyra, she'd sit there in judgment panels, head tilted, that signature hum, dissecting them like lab rats. That signature hum, dissecting them like lab rats. You are too commercial. Your walk is country. Your body is thick. The sarcasm dripped, but the viewers loved it, ratings climbed, so the machine kept escalating. Cycle 2. Shandy Sullivan, sweet girl from Kansas City, Missouri, grew up in a trailer park basically. Mom worked nights, dad was absent. Mom worked nights, dad was absent. Shandy was the classic underdog story the show loved. Pretty but awkward, zero confidence, desperate to escape her dead-end life. Pretty but awkward, zero confidence, desperate to escape her dead-end life. She makes it to the house and producers start feeding her alcohol like it's water. They bring in male models for practice shoots. Dim the lights, crank the music. Dim the lights, crank the music. One night it all goes wrong. Shandy ends up in a bedroom with one of the guys. She's blackout drunk, slurring, barely conscious. Cameras are rolling the whole time. The next morning, the footage is everywhere in the house. Producers pull her into a room, make her watch it, make her cry on camera about cheating on her boyfriend back home. Make her watch it, make her cry on camera about cheating on her boyfriend back home. They edit it like she's the villain of the season. America eats it up. The cheating scandal becomes national tabloid fodder. Shandy gets eliminated soon after, goes home humiliated, and for 20 years she carries that shame. But here's where shit gets truly fucked up, and the new docuseries finally drags it into the light. In reality check, Shandy sits down, voice steady but eyes haunted, and she says it plain. I was too intoxicated to consent. I don't remember most of it. They knew, the producers knew, they brought the guys there, they plied us with booze. And then they framed it as me being a cheater, so I couldn't sue them for what happened under their watch. She describes the smell of that house. Stale cigarette smoke, cheap perfume, fear. The way the camera lights felt like spotlights in an interrogation room. The way Tyra in the confessional booth later just shook her head and said, Shandy, you knew better. No support, no are you okay, just ratings gold. And that's only the beginning. Because while Shandy was getting crucified on national TV, Tyra was building her brand as the empathetic queen. She'd do those one-on-one talks with the girls, crying right along with them, then turn around and green light the next humiliation. Word on the street from crew members who worked those early seasons, people still scared to talk on record but who slipped me DMs years ago, is that Tyra had final cut on everything. Every edit, every dramatic music sting, every slow zoom on a crying face. She knew exactly what she was doing. Every edit, every dramatic music sting, every slow zoom on a crying face. She knew exactly what she was doing. Cycle 3. Eva Pickford wins, but the real story is the girls who didn't. The makeovers get crazier. One girl gets her teeth filed down live on camera. One girl gets her teeth filed down live on camera. Another is told her natural hair isn't commercial, so they straighten it until it breaks off. Tyra's sitting there, smiling, telling them, "Beauty is pain, girls." Sarcastic as hell, right? Beauty is pain, my ass. This was straight up psychological warfare, dressed in heels and gloss. Then cycle 4, the infamous ethnicity swap shoot. Girls are told to become different races. Black girls get blonde wigs and blue contacts. White girls get dark makeup. It's presented as art, but even back then people called it blackface light. Tyra defends it hard in interviews. "We are breaking barriers." Tyra defends it hard in interviews. "We are breaking barriers." Come on, we all know that's bullshit now. It was lazy, offensive, and it made money. The ratings spiked again. So the pattern locked in. Push the girls harder, make the drama nastier, watch the numbers climb. By cycle 5, the house is a full-on pressure cooker. Lisa D'Amato, the wild child, the one they loved to poke at because of her rough childhood, gets manipulated into emotional breakdowns for the camera. Producers would pull her aside, remind her of her past traumas, then roll tape. She later said in old podcasts, the show used her abuse history like a weapon. Remind her of her past traumas, then roll tape. She later said in old podcasts, the show used her abuse history like a weapon. And Tyra? She'd hug her on panel. And Tyra? She'd hug her on panel, then cut her down in the next breath. You are too much, Lisa. The audience ate it like candy. Cycle 6. Dani Evans. Beautiful girl. Gap in her teeth that the industry suddenly decided was a problem. Tyra and the judges pressure her hard. Tyra and the judges pressure her hard. You need to fix it if you want to win. Dani ends up in a dentist chair getting veneers drilled in, all while cameras roll. She is 19, scared. The docuseries shows the footage now. Dani crying in the chair, Tyra off camera saying, "This is gonna make you a star." Dani wins the cycle anyway, but years later she admits the pressure messed with her head for years. Coercion into surgery, on a reality show, for entertainment. And through all of it, Tyra's empire grows. She launches her talk show, her production company, her cosmetics line. She is making tens of millions, while the girls go home with maybe a few $1,000s, agent contracts that never materialize, and PTSD that therapy can't touch. Insiders who were in the room swear Tyra would watch the dailies and laugh at the breakdowns sometimes. "This is gold," she'd say. "Keep pushing them." The smell of money and betrayal was thick in those production offices in Los Angeles. You can almost picture it. Tyra in her designer chair, feet up, reviewing footage of a girl having a panic attack after being told she's too fat for the runway. Ken Mock nodding along. Jay Manuel trying to soften the blow but still directing the next cruel photoshoot. Miss J cackling in the corner because the show demanded drama. And the girls? Locked in a mansion with no phones, no escape, just each other and the constant threat of elimination. This is where the real motive kicks in, folks. It wasn't about empowering models, it was never about that. It was about creating the most addictive, most shocking television possible in the early 2000s reality boom. Survivor had tribes voting each other off, Big Brother had fights, ANTM had crying, starving, humiliated girls in 6-inch heels. And Tyra was the puppet master. She made bank. The show ran for 24 cycles, spawned international versions, made her a household name. She got rich off their destruction. But the cracks were widening. Girls started speaking out quietly after their seasons. Old interviews where they'd hint at the abuse but get shut down because Tyra still had power. Leaked texts from crew members complaining about the long hours, the unsafe shoots, the way contestants were left alone after breakdowns. One former producer told me off the record, "We knew it was wrong, but the checks cleared." Classic Hollywood. And then cycle 8, the one where things really start spiraling. More weight shaming, more race baiting challenges. A photo shoot where a girl whose mother was murdered has to pose as a shooting victim. Yeah, they did that. The girl's in tears on set, producers keep rolling. Tyra watches the footage later and calls it powerful. Powerful my ass. It was exploitation, plain and simple. I'm telling you, the deeper I dig, and I've been digging for weeks since that docuseries dropped, the more it feels like a slow-motion crime that lasted 15 years. Every elimination panel was a public execution. Every makeover was a forced identity change. Every late-night heart-to-heart with Tyra was just more footage for the edit bay. And the girls kept coming because the dream was sold so hard. You could be the next Tyra, but most of them ended up as cautionary tales. Now here's the part that makes my blood boil. The new docuseries doesn't just show the old clips. It has Tyra sitting there in a fancy trench coat, hair perfect, trying to explain it all away. The industry was different back then. We were pushing boundaries. The audience wanted more drama. She even says she apologized to Dani about the teeth thing. But the contestants, they're sitting across from her in the interviews, faces tight, calling her out. Jay Manuel, who was her right hand for years, finally spills. Tyra would do anything for the success of the show. Ken Mock admits, we built a monster. Miss J is there too, talking about his own health scares that happened because of the stress, but that's a story for later. The doc confirms what the whispers always said, no real safeguards. Girls were isolated, overworked, underfed for shoots, encouraged to turn on each other. Sexual harassment from male models and crew got brushed off as part of the business. One girl in the doc talks about being groped during a photo shoot and the producer telling her to just smile through it. And Shandy's story? The doc lets her tell it full force. She describes waking up the next morning with no memory, the producers shoving a camera in her face demanding tears, the way they edited her into the villain so she'd look bad if she ever sued. They protected themselves, she says, not me. And Tyra's response in the doc? Weak. I'm sorry you felt that way. Felt that way? Come on, we all know that's bullshit. This is only the surface though, because the deeper we go into the later cycles, the worse it gets. The firings, the stripped titles, the $1 million promises that turned into $300 PT checks. But we are not there yet. Right now we are still in the early days, when the machine was just revving up, when Tyra was still pretending to be the savior while she sharpened the knife. I'm Strange and this is Dirty Hollywood. We are just getting started peeling back the layers on America's Next Top Model and the Tyra Banks era that destroyed dreams for sport. The docuseries confirmed what we suspected, but the real story, it's uglier, it's deeper, and it involves a whole network of people who profited while the girls suffered in silence. Stick with me, because next we are diving into the specific takedowns, the screaming matches, the weight shaming that nearly broke bodies, the way Tyra turned on her own judges when the money got tight. You're not gonna believe what happened when the ratings started slipping and the masks came all the way off. The betrayal was personal. The money was massive, and the girls, they were just collateral damage in Tyra's rise to the top. This is the story Hollywood tried to bury, but we are digging it up right now, one filthy layer at a time. And trust me, it only gets darker from here. But let me tell you exactly how the darkness crept in deeper. Because once the early cycles proved the formula worked, cry, fight, starve, repeat, Tyra didn't just double down. She turned the whole operation into a personal empire of control that nobody on the outside could touch. We're talking the mid-cycles now, cycles 7 through 12, when the show had already made her a multi-millionaire, and the girls were no longer wide-eyed hopefuls, but pawns in a game she had perfected. Picture the production offices in Los Angeles again, but this time the air smells even thicker with betrayal, fresh coffee from craft services, mixed with the faint metallic tang of fierce sweat from the contestants who'd been up for 36 hours straight on a shoot. Tyra's in her private trailer, legs crossed, reviewing raw footage on a massive monitor while a personal assistant hovers with a green juice. She is not the awkward Inglewood kid anymore, she is the boss, the brand, the one who could make or break careers with a single arched eyebrow on panel night. Cycle 7 drops in 26 and right out the gate the cruelty gets surgical. The girls are flown to exotic locations now. Thailand, one of the first big international shoots. But the docuseries reality check shows the behind-the-scenes footage that never aired. One contestant, a girl named Jada, who came from a strict military family in Texas, gets her first real taste of the machine. She's 21, never left the country, and the producers decide to test her limits by stranding her in a remote village with no translator, no real instructions, just a camera crew filming her panic. Adapt or die, the challenge is called. Jada breaks down in the middle of a market, tears streaming, locals staring, and when she finally gets back to the house, she's shaking. Tyra's reaction on panel? She leans forward, that signature slow blink, and says in the calmest voice, "Jada, you have to learn to be a chameleon. If you can't handle this, how are you gonna handle Milan?" But insiders who were there, people still scared to talk but who leaked audio clips to me years ago, swear Tyra had personally approved the setup. She knew the girl would crack. It was engineered drama. And Jada? She gets eliminated 2 episodes later, goes home, and in the new doc she finally says what she couldn't back then. I felt like I was being waterboarded emotionally. They isolated me on purpose so the cameras could capture pure breakdown. That's the pattern, locking in tighter now. No more pretending it was about modeling, it was about breaking them for content. And Tyra was making bank of every single tear. The show was pulling in 25 million viewers some weeks, sponsors lining up, her talk show spinning off, her production company buying up more real estate in Beverly Hills. But here's where the first real fractures inside the inner circle start showing, and the docuseries doesn't shy away from them. Jay Manuel, the creative director who'd been her ride or die since cycle 1, starts clashing with her in the edit bay. Word on the street from crew who were in those late night sessions is that Jay would push back on some of the harsher edits. "Tyra, this makes her look suicidal, we can't air that," and she'd shut him down cold. "It's reality, Jay, they signed up for it." He'd later describe in the doc, voice low and careful, like he's still choosing his words. "She had this way of making you feel like if you didn't go alone, you were the one betraying the vision." Miss J. Alexander, the walking legend with the runway strut, was trying to play the fun uncle role, but even he got sucked into the toxicity. He'd hype the girls up backstage, then watch them get torn apart on panel, and the guild started eating at him. One leaked text from around that time from Miss J to a friend who later shared it anonymously reads, "This is getting too real. Tyra's turning into the very monster we used to complain about in the industry. And the contestants keep getting younger, hungrier, more vulnerable. Take Kenya Hill from cycle 4. Wait, she carried over the trauma into later cycles through reunions. But in cycle 7 we meet girls like Monique, the plus-size beauty from Detroit, who grew up in foster care, bouncing between homes, dreaming of the cover of Vogue. She makes top 6, and the weight shaming ramps up to levels that make your stomach turn. Producers put scales in the house bathroom, film her stepping on it every morning, zoom in on the number. Tyra on panel. "Monique, your body is beautiful, but the camera adds 10 pounds. We need you to be fierce, not fluffy." The audience ate it up, but Monique later told the doc, eyes glassy, "I stopped eating for 3 days after that. I was 19. I had never had an eating disorder before ANTM." They forced her into a nude shoot where she had to pose confidently while feeling like trash, and the final edit made her look empowered. Bullshit, it was straight manipulation. She gained the weight back after the show, spiraled into depression, and the network offered her zero support, just a pat on the back and a plane ticket home. Cycle 8 takes it to another level with the infamous Tyra's tirade episodes. Remember the one where she screamed at a contestant named Whitney for not trying hard enough? The docuseries plays the unedited audio now, the full version that leaked from the sound booth. Tyra's voice cracks with real rage. "You think this is a joke? I built this! I came from nothing! You're wasting my time!" The room goes dead silent. Whitney, a girl from the projects in Philadelphia with a single mom who worked 2 jobs, just stands there frozen, mascara running. People who were in the room swear the air felt like it had been sucked out. Nobody breathed until Tyra stormed off set. And why the explosion? Ratings had dipped slightly that week, and Tyra was under pressure from UPN execs to deliver bigger numbers. Motive clear as day: keep the machine fat or lose the golden goose. Whitney gets eliminated, goes home, and years later in the doc she reveals the private meeting after the camera stopped. Tyra pulled her aside, hugged her, whispered, "You're strong, girl," then walked away like nothing happened. Classic gaslighting. The girl carried that whiplash for years. Public villain, private mentor. Let's be real for a second. This wasn't just Tyra being a tough boss. This was calculated psychological warfare, and the new doc lays out the paper trail from old production notes that somehow survived the digital purge. Memos that read like military ops, target contestant in Security X, film reaction for at least 5 minutes uninterrupted, edit to emphasize tears, encourage alcohol after 10 p.m. for drama. One former assistant producer, still terrified of NDAs but who spoke to the doc under heavy blur, described Tyra reviewing dailies like a general studying battle plans. She'd point at the screen and say, "This girl's crying is money, make sure we get more of that tomorrow." And the money? By cycle 8, she was pulling in over $15 million a season personally, plus backend points on international versions. The girls? Most walked away with maybe $5,000 if they were lucky, and a lifetime of therapy bills. Cycle 9 introduces even more players who got chewed up and spit out. Renee, the tall beauty from New York with a perfect portfolio but a history of anxiety that the producers sniffed out like sharks. They schedule back-to-back shoots in the desert, no sleep, then film her having a full panic attack on camera. Tyra's response? She turns it into a teaching moment on panel. "Renee, you have to push through the fear. Models don't have panic attacks on the runway," sarcastic eye roll implied. But the doc shows the raw footage. Renee hyperventilating, begging for a break, crew just keeping the cameras rolling. Insiders swear a medic was on set, but Tyra waved him off until they got the shot. Renee gets sent home mid-cycle and her career never recovers. She later sues quietly for emotional distress. The paperwork got sealed, but court whispers leaked that the settlement was in the low 6 figures, just enough to keep her quiet. Tyra's team spins it as creative differences. And here is where the backstabbing inside the judge panel really hits up, because success breeds jealousy like nothing else. Nigel Barker, the photographer judge who'd been the calm British voice of reason, starts documenting his own frustrations in private journals that the doc somehow got access to. He writes about Tyra overriding his creative calls, forcing him to criticize girls he actually liked, just for drama. "She wants blood," one entry says, "not fashion." Miss J starts having health issues from the stress. The doc shows him in a hospital bed years later, linking it directly to the non-stop travel and emotional whiplash of the show. He tells the camera, voice cracking a little, "I loved those girls like daughters, but I was part of the machine that hurt them." J. Manuel? He gets fired eventually, but we are not there yet. The tension builds like a slow burn fuse. Cycle 10, 2007, and the show goes full international with shoots in Brazil, China, you name it. But the cruelty travels with them. One girl, a 17-year-old named Fatima from a conservative family in the Midwest, gets her first bikini shoot, and the producers push her hard, oil her up, make her pose provocatively, film her discomfort up close. She cries off camera, calls her mom in tears, but the phones are monitored. Tyra finds out and uses it on panel as proof she is not ready for the industry. The girl gets eliminated, goes home, and her family basically disowns her for the shame the show amplified. In reality check, she sits down for the first time publicly and says, "They knew my background, they knew it would destroy my life back home, they did it anyway because it made good TV." The smell of that betrayal still lingers in her voice 20 years later. By now, Tyra's diva side is in full bloom. Leaked emails from her personal assistant around cycle 11 show demands that would make your head spin. Tyra wants all green M&Ms removed from craft services. Fresh orchids in her trailer daily. No one speaks to her before 10 AM unless it's good news. Crew members were walking on eggshells, gay shells. One photographer who worked multiple seasons told me off the record through an encrypted chat. She'd smile for the cameras like the loving mama, then turn around and berate a PA for not having her coffee at exactly 140 degrees. The girls saw glimpses and it terrified them. And the contestants? They were starving for validation from her, literally and figuratively. Weight loss challenges became routine, with trainers pushing them to drop 10 pounds in a week while shooting swimsuits. One girl in cycle 11, a plus-size model named Celia, collapses on set from dehydration. Cameras keep rolling. Tyra visits her in the hospital later for a heartfelt segment, but the doc reveals the real motive. It was PR damage control after fan backlash started brewing online. The online part is key here, because this is when social media starts biting back for the first time. Early Twitter rants from eliminated girls, deleted almost immediately but screenshotted and saved by fans. One tweet from a Cycle 9 reject reads, "Tyra Banks is not who you think, she broke me on purpose, hashtag ANTM truth." It gets ratioed by Tyra stance at the time, but years later it surfaces in the doc as proof. Leaked DMs between contestants after the show form group chats where they compare notes. "Did she tell you the same thing about your body? She promised me the contract too." The network of survivors starts forming quietly, sharing horror stories that would eventually fuel the doc-series itself. Cycle 12 brings us to the infamous Top Model in Action season, where they pair the girls with real designers, but the exploitation ramps up. One designer, a big name who shall remain nameless because he's still working, allegedly gets too handsy with a contestant during a fitting. The girl reports it to producers. Tyra's response, according to multiple insiders: "Handle it quietly, we need his sponsorship." The girl gets edited as difficult and sent packing. No police report, no real investigation, just another body in the pile. The doc confirms it with blurred faces and voice distortion, but the message is clear: protect the brand at all costs. Money is flowing like water now. Tyra's personal net worth hit the 200 million mark around this time. Her cosmetics line exploding, her talk show in syndication. She buys a private jet, a mansion in Malibu with ocean views, throws parties where the A-list comes to kiss the ring. Meanwhile, the girls who made it to the finale get maybe a $50,000 contract that evaporates when the agency drops them 6 months later. Exposure, they call it. Exposure my ass. It was smoke and mirrors, while Tyra counted her checks. The pattern is crystal now. Find the broken ones, amplify the cracks, film the shatter, profit. New layers keep peeling, judges turning on each other behind closed doors, crew burnout leading to leaks, contestants forming secret alliances in the house just to survive the psychological warfare. One girl in Cycle 12 smuggles a burner phone in, texts her sister at night. "This is hell. Tyra is the devil in heels." That text gets leaked years later, and it's in the doc verbatim. The sister confirms it broke her heart to read her baby sister so destroyed. I'm telling you, the deeper we dig into these mid-years, the more it feels like a cult of personality built on young women's pain. Tyra wasn't just hosting, she was orchestrating a machine that fed on insecurity, and she got richer with every cycle. But the wheels were starting to wobble. Ratings peaking then plateauing, sponsors whispering, the online backlash growing from whispers to roars. Jay gets closer to the exit. Miss J starts pulling back. Nigel documents more and more. The girls who survived are tougher now, angrier, ready to talk someday. And that's exactly when the real implosion begins to brew. The firings, the lawsuits, the moment the empire cracks wide open under its own weight. But we are not there yet. The story is still climbing, still stacking bodies, still smelling like money and broken dreams in those overlit mansions and added bass. The docuseries shows Tyra trying to rewrite history now, but the receipts are piling up faster than she can delete them. But that rot was about to eat the whole thing from the inside out, starting when the show hit its so-called golden era of all-stars and the real knives came out for everyone involved, turning what was already a pressure cooker into a full-blown arena where even the people who helped build it started getting thrown under the bus. Cycle 13 kicks things off in 2009 with the show trying to refresh its image by repeating some of those old provocative concepts like the race-swapping shoot all over again. Only this time the girls are older, supposedly wiser, and the backlash is starting to brew online in ways the producers could not ignore. The air in those Los Angeles sound stages feels heavier now. The fluorescent lights buzzing louder over the long tables where the judges sit. The smell of hairspray and desperation mixing with the faint scent of takeout that the crew scarfs down while the contestants wait hours between takes without a real meal. Tyra is still front and center. but you can feel the shift in the room, the way her smiles do not quite reach her eyes anymore when she flips through the portfolios and picks apart every flaw like it is personal. The girls in that cycle include names like Nicole Fox, who ends up taking the crown, but the real fireworks come from the ones who get caught in the crossfire of the escalating games. One contestant, a tall beauty named Brittany Brower from the Midwest, gets singled out during a challenge where they force the group into another one of those ethnicity transformation setups. And the way the production frames her discomfort turns her into the season's easy target for drama. Insiders who work the edit bay later tell the docuseries that Tyra personally signed off on the cut that made Brittany look uncooperative. Even though footage shows her asking for basic directions that never came, the betrayal here is not new, but the way it's pressed to the judges panel starts to crack the loyalties that held everything together for so long. Nigel Barker is still there trying to play the voice of reason, but even he starts documenting his growing unease in notes that surface years later, writing about how the creative calls were getting overridden in favor of shock value that no longer felt fresh. Fast forward to the real turning point, Cycle 17, the All-Stars season in 2011, where they bring back some of the most memorable faces from previous runs and promise them a second shot at glory. This is where the empire really starts to cannibalize itself, and the docuseries Reality Check spends the whole episode unpacking the mess with raw footage and sit-down interviews that make your skin crawl. Enter Angelia Preston, the girl from Buffalo, New York, who had already placed third in Cycle 14 and came back hungry for redemption. She grew up rough, bounced around foster care, survived things most people cannot even imagine, and she laid it all out during casting, including the short period when she worked as an escort after an abusive relationship left her with no options. Producers knew, Tyra knew, Ken Mock knew. They cast her anyway because the story was gold for ratings and the house cameras captured her fighting through every challenge like a warrior. The finale shoots in Las Vegas, the room packed with lights and mirrors, the air thick with the smell of victory champagne and nerves. Angelia nails the final runway, the panel loads, and boom, she is crowned the winner right there on stage. Confetti falls, she cries, the crowd cheers, and for a split second, it looks like the machine is finally giving someone a fair shot. But wait for it, because here is where shit gets truly fucked up, in a way that exposes the entire operation for the hypocritical machine it had become. Days later, after the taping but before the episode airs, Angelia gets pulled into a private meeting in a sterile conference room at the production offices. Tyra is there, Ken Mock beside her, both of them stone-faced. They tell her the win is being stripped for unusual circumstances, code for the fact that her past as an escort had somehow become a liability, even though they had known about it from day one. The doc shows the unedited audio from that meeting, Angelia's voice breaking as she asks why now, after everything, and Tyra's response is calm, almost scripted. We have to protect the brand. They reshoot the finale without her, hand the crown to Lisa D'Amato instead, and air the whole thing like nothing happened. Angelia goes home devastated, the title gone, the promised opportunities evaporated overnight. She sues Tyra and the DDK company in 2014, the court documents detailing how the disqualification destroyed her mentally and financially. But the case gets settled quietly out of court with a non-disclosure that still has people whispering today. In the new docuseries, she sits down for the first time without the blur, eyes hard, and says straight to camera that the producers had encouraged her to open up about her trauma during filming, only to weaponize it the second it no longer served the narrative. People who were in the room swear the decision came straight from the top, a calculated move to avoid any sponsor pushback once word leaked internally. The smell of money and betrayal in that conference room must have been choking. The fluorescent lights reflecting off the polished table, while Angela's dreams got torched in real time. And Lisa D'Amato, the winner by default, does not exactly walk away clean either. She had come back for All-Stars with her own agenda, telling friends it was about getting revenge for how she felt manipulated in her original cycle. But the doc reveals the production team kept poking at her old wounds anyway, bringing up childhood stuff during late-night confessionals to juice the drama. Lisa wins, but in her interview for Reality Check, she describes the whole thing as hollow, the crown feeling like a consolation prize handed over after they sacrificed someone else on the altar of good television. She talks about the exhaustion, the way the 20-hour filming days left everyone running on fumes, no real food breaks, no mental health check-ins, just cameras and the constant threat of elimination. Word on the street from crew who worked that season is that Tyra was micromanaging harder than ever, demanding reshoots at 3 in the morning because the lighting did not feel right, while the girls stood there, freezing in designer gowns that cost more than their monthly rent back home. This all-stars mess marks the beginning of the mass exodus on the panel, and the betrayals get personal fast. After Cycle 18 wraps in 2012, Tyra makes the call to clean house. Jay Manuel gets the boot first, the creative director who had been with her since the pilot, suddenly finding himself on the outside looking in. In the doc, he finally opens up about the phone call that ended it, voice steady but with that edge of someone who has held it in for over a decade. He describes how Tyra had changed, how the collaborative partner he once knew had become someone who would not tolerate any pushback on the increasingly cruel edits. Jay had tried to advocate for the girls during those marathon shoots in remote locations, suggesting breaks when the heat or the isolation got too much, but the response was always the same: the show must go on. His departure is framed publicly as a mutual decision, but leaked emails that surface in the doc paint a different picture, full of passive-aggressive notes about creative differences that really boil down to Jay not wanting to keep signing off on content that left contestants in tears for hours. Miss J. Alexander follows not long after, the iconic runway coach whose health had already taken hits from the non-stop travel and stress. He appears in Reality Check looking back with a mix of fondness and regret, admitting that the fun uncle persona he projected on camera masked the toll it took. The way he would go home after panel and question if he had really helped anyone or just fed the beast. Nigel Barker is the last of the original crew to go, his exit hitting right around Cycle 19. The British photographer who had been the steady one, the one who tried to inject some actual fashion credibility into the chaos, gets replaced without much fanfare. In his sit-down for the doc, he pulls out old journals, reading entries where he vented about the growing disconnect between what the show claimed to be and what it actually did to the young women on it. He talks about specific shoots in the later cycles where safety went out the window, like one in a foreign country where the girls were left without proper security in sketchy areas Panle, because the dramatic location shots were worth the risk. Nigel describes the final meeting with Tyra as polite but final. The kind of Hollywood goodbye, where everyone smiles and pretends it is not a firing. The new judges stepping in, like Paulina Poriskova, who joins around Cycle 19, brings their own brand of tough love. But the doc shows clips of her clashing with Tyra behind the scenes, over how far to push the girls. Paulina, a supermodel in her own right with decades of industry scars, tries to draw lines on body comments and emotional manipulation, only to get overruled when the ratings need a boost. Cycle 21 brings in fresh faces like Winnie Harlow, the Canadian model with vitiligo who becomes a breakout star, but not without her own share of the machine's ugliness. The panel fixates on her skin condition in ways that feel less like celebration and more like spectacle, with comments that get edited to sound supportive but leave her feeling like a prop in one of those before and after transformation narratives the show loved so much. Winnie handles it with grace on air, but in private conversations that leaked later, she confides to fellow contestants about the exhaustion of constantly defending her body while cameras roll. The production pushes her into challenges that highlight the condition for shock value, and even though she goes far, the Docuseries interviews reveal how the constant scrutiny amplified insecurities she had spent years overcoming. Tyra's empire is still raking in the cash at this point. International versions spinning off left and right, but the online chatter is turning toxic, fans starting petitions, former girls forming private support groups where they swap stories of NDAs and therapy sessions paid for out of pocket. By Cycle 22, the final one under Tyra's full control in 2015, the wheels are not just wobbling, they are flying off. The house feels emptier somehow. the energy drained, the contestants sensing the end is near, even if the network has not announced it yet. New scandals bubble up in the edit, like a photoshoot where the girls are asked to pose in ways that border on exploitative. One contestant later describing in the doc how she felt objectified by a guest photographer who crossed lines and how the complaint got buried because the sponsor deal was too important. Tyra tries to keep the mentor facade intact, doing those one-on-one talks in the confessional room with the soft lighting and the tissues ready, but the girls see through it now. Leaked texts from a production assistant around that time read like a cry for help. The hours are killing us, the girls are breaking, and Tyra just wants more drama for the finale. The ratings are sleeping, social media is ripping the show apart episode by episode, and the money that once flowed so freely starts to feel like it is being squeezed from a stone. The internal backstabbing reaches a fever pitch when word gets out that Tyra is eyeing a soft launch for a comeback, even as she distances herself from the old guard. Jay, Miss J and Nigel all appear in reality check with varying degrees of candor, but the common thread is this quiet resentment toward how Tyra positioned herself as the sole visionary, while they took the heat for the tough calls. One anonymous crew member in the doc, voice distorted, describes a late-night rap party after Cycle 20, where Tyra toasted to the end of an era, but then pulled key people aside to remind them of their contracts. The implication clear: keep the secrets or else. The girls from those final seasons form the backbone of the docuseries' most explosive testimonies, naming names and dates, pulling out old call sheets that prove the unsafe conditions were policy, not accident. One contestant from Cycle 20, a girl named Kyla who made top 5, talks about collapsing from dehydration during a desert shoot and how the medic was delayed because Tyra wanted the shot first. The footage is there in the doc, raw and unfiltered. Her face pale under the harsh sun, while producers argue in the background about whether to cut. This is the layer the early cycles never showed. The slow implosion, where the very people who profited the most started turning on each other when the spotlight shifted. Tyra's production company is still thriving on paper, her net worth climbing past the 300 million mark with the talk show reruns and brand deals. But the foundation is cracking under the weight of all those buried stories. Insiders who were there for the transition swear the decision to end the original run came after a string of quiet settlements with girls who threatened to go public, the kind of payouts that never made the news, but kept the lead on just long enough for Tyra to rebrand. The doc captures her in a fancy chair during her interview segment, legs crossed, hair flawless, explaining how the industry was different back then and how she was responding to it. But the contestants sitting across from her in those split-screen moments look unconvinced, their faces saying what words cannot. The betrayal feels generational now. The young women who trusted the dream, watching it get monetized at their expense, while the architect walks away richer and seemingly unscathed. And yet the machine keeps humming in the background. International versions still running in places where the scrutiny is lighter, old episodes streaming and racking up views from a new generation who have no idea what went on behind the glossy edits. The docuseries tries to confront it, bringing everyone into the same room for the first time in years, but the tension is palpable, the air thick with unfinished business and half apologies that do not land. Tyra talks about growth and learning, but the girls who lived it demand more, naming the specific ways the isolation, the sleep deprivation, the targeted emotional triggers left scars that therapy cannot fully erase. This is the part where the story stops being about a reality show and starts feeling like a class action waiting to happen. The kind of Hollywood reckoning that usually only comes when the money dries up or the public finally stops looking away. I am telling you, the deeper we go into these later years, the clearer it becomes that the cruelty was not a bug in the system. It was the entire operating system, updated and refined with every cycle, until the code started glitching under its own weight. New players entered the game thinking they could change it from within, only to get spit out the same way the originals did. The firings, the disqualifications, the quiet lawsuits, they all point back to one central motive: protect the brand protect the money, protect Tyra at all costs. The docuseries confirms it with receipts that cannot be spun anymore, leaked production memos, unedited audio, faces we have not seen in 15 years, finally speaking their truth. But even now, with the world watching, the full picture is still emerging, because the network of survivors keeps growing, the group chats keep buzzing with new details, and the fear of speaking out is slowly giving way to the need to be heard. This is where the empire's collapse becomes inevitable, where the masks come off completely and the real cost of all those millions starts to show in the eyes of the women who paid it with their peace of mind. The story is not over, not by a long shot, because the final act involves the very doc we are watching, the one where Tyra sits down to rewrite her legacy while the people she left behind refuse to let her close the book. The money was always the motive, the control was always the method, and the destruction was always the outcome. I am strange, and on Dirty Hollywood we do not stop digging until the truth is out in the open, where it belongs. The later cycles did not save the show, they exposed it for what it had always been, a glittering trap that looked like opportunity, but felt like a cage. And the women who escaped it are only now finding their voices loud enough to shake the whole damn foundation. But the foundation did not just shake, it started crumbling in ways that reached far beyond the final elimination panel and into the quiet years after the original run wrapped, when the cameras stopped rolling for good on the Tyra era, and the survivors began piecing together what the machine had really cost them, long after the confetti settled and the contracts dried up. Picture the transition period right after Cycle 22 wrapped in 2015. The production offices in Los Angeles suddenly quieter than they had been in over a decade. The edit base still humming with leftover footage that would never see the light of day, because the network was already eyeing a soft pivot away from the original formula. Tyra steps back from hosting duties publicly, framing it as a creative evolution, but insiders who stuck around for the handover described the atmosphere as one of controlled panic, with executives scrambling to keep the brand alive without her at the center, while she quietly shifted focus to her talk show reruns and brand partnerships that kept the money flowing steady. The show tries to reinvent itself without the original architect calling every shot. Cycle 23 launches with a new host stepping in, the energy shifting toward fresher faces and supposedly updated challenges. But the old patterns linger like ghosts in the house. One contestant from that cycle, a determined young woman named India from a small town in Georgia, who had clawed her way through open calls with nothing but grit and a dream of breaking into high fashion, finds herself thrust into a photo shoot that pushes boundaries in ways that feel eerily familiar to the old playbook. The crew films her in extreme conditions, long hours under harsh lights with minimal breaks, and when she voices discomfort about the physical toll, the response from production is to keep rolling, because the drama will play well in the edit. India pushes through, makes it deep into the competition, but the exhaustion catches up in a way that leaves her questioning everything once the season ends. Years later, when the new docuseries starts filming its interviews, she sits down and describes the isolation she felt, the way the lack of any real support system on set turned what should have been a stepping stone into a period of silent recovery that took months of therapy to unpack. No big blow up on camera, just the slow burn of realizing the system had been designed to extract every ounce of vulnerability without giving anything back. Then Cycle 24 drops in 2018, the final one before the whole thing goes on indefinite hiatus. And this is where the docuseries digs into fresh territory, with testimonies that hit like body blows, because they come from girls who were promised the reboot would be different. Jenna Turner stands out in those episodes, a striking contestant with a background in pageants and a fierce determination that the producers latch onto immediately. She comes from a family that had sacrificed everything to get her to the auditions, and during filming she gets caught in a challenge that involves high-risk physical elements, including shoots in unpredictable weather and with equipment that feels unsafe even to the crew whispering off mic. Jenna speaks out in the doc about the moment she realized production production was prioritizing the shot over basic safety protocols, describing the chill in the air during a nighttime outdoor setup where temperatures dropped and no one offered proper gear until the cameras had captured the struggle. She gets far in the competition, but the toll shows in private moments that the edit never fully captured, and when the season wraps, she walks away with a mixed bag of exposure that never translates to the career breakthrough she was sold. In reality check, she looks straight into the lens and lays it out plain, voice steady but laced with a kind of quiet anger that comes from years of holding it in. The production notes that Surface and the doc from that cycle reveal memos about maintaining tension through sleep deprivation and limited food options during key shoots. The same playbook refined over 2 decades but now dressed up in newer branding. The real earthquake hits in 2026 when Netflix drops Reality Check, the 3-episode deep dive that nobody in the industry saw coming with quite this level of access. Filming for the doc had started quietly back in 2024. Directors Morlushi and Daniel Sivan pulling strings to get unprecedented sit-downs Village. With everyone from former contestants scattered across the country to the remaining inner circle who had once sworn loyalty oaths. Village. Tyra agrees to participate, and word from the production team behind the doc is Village. That her team viewed it as a chance to control the narrative Village, and maybe even tease a Cycle 25 comeback after 8 years off air. Village. The interviews are shot in neutral studios with soft lighting meant to encourage candor. Village. But the tension crackles in every frame when she sits across from the very women whose stories now carry the weight of hindsight. Village. One extended sequence shows her responding to questions about specific late cycle decisions. Village. Her posture perfect. That signature poise intact. Village. But the poses stretch longer when pressed on the financial side of things. Village. Insiders who were in the room during those tapings swear the air got thick. Village. When the conversation turned to how contestants were compensated, with reports surfacing of daily rates as low as $40. Village. No residuals from the endless reruns, and out-of-pocket costs for travel and styling. Village. That left many girls in debt by the time they headed home. Village. The doc does not hold back on the broader patterns that persisted right up until the end, including allegations of sexual harassment during certain guest-directed shoots. Village. Where lines were crossed and complaints got redirected into storylines. Village. That painted the girls as difficult rather than protected. Village. Tiffany Richardson, whose Cycle 4 moment had become a viral meme for years, resurfaces in a Raw segment where she describes not just the on-camera confrontation. Village, but the off-camera comments that cut deeper, the kind of private remarks that never made the final edit but lingered in her memory like poison. Village. She calls out the lack of any real bystander intervention on set, noting how dozens of crew members witnessed uncomfortable interactions. Village. Yet no one stepped up because the machine was built to keep the content flowing. Village. The doc pairs her testimony with archival clips and new context from production assistants who have since left the business, describing a culture where complaints were logged. Village. But rarely escalated if they risked delaying a shoot day. What makes the whole thing explode in the cultural conversation is how Tyra frames her involvement during her segments. Village. She participates, sure, but the docuseries captures her offering explanations that land like deflections rather than ownership. Village. She talks about the industry being different back then, about learning and growing, but when pressed on specific instances like the coercion into cosmetic procedures. Village. Or the weaponizing of personal backstories for emotional beats, her responses circle back to audience demand and the pressures of live television production. Village. Jay Manuel, even after his earlier exit, appears in follow-up footage calling out some of those claims directly, pointing to documented instances where creative decisions traced straight back to her desk. Village. The online firestorm that followed the drop is immediate and brutal, with hashtags trending for days as Gen Z and younger millennials who binged the original episodes during lockdown. Village. Now dissect every frame with fresh eyes, informed by body positivity movements and post-MeToo awareness. petitions circulate calling for industry-wide reforms, and a handful of former contestants band together Village to lobby lawmakers in California for better protections on reality sets, citing everything from mental health safeguards to fair pay standards that were non-existent during the original run, Village. The financial dissection in the final episode is particularly damning because it lays out the numbers in black and white. Tyra's personal empire, built on the back of those 24 cycles, Village, had ballooned into the hundreds of millions by the mid-2000s, with back-end deals, international spin-offs, and merchandising that kept the cash register ringing long after the last runway walk, Village. Yet the contestants, even the winners, often received contracts that evaporated into agency obligations that rarely materialized into steady work, Village. One anonymous production accountant who spoke under heavy disguise in the doc breaks down how the budget prioritized celebrity judges, exotic locations, and dramatic set pieces while skimping on basics like on-site counseling or proper medical oversight during physically demanding challenges. Village, the smell of that imbalance lingers in the air during the reenactments. The contrast between the glossy runway lights and the dim hotel rooms where girls counted pennies after filming crept. Village. Long-term, the fallout spreads like ripples in a pond that refuses to settle. Some girls, like those who had defended the experience publicly in the past, step forward again to offer nuance, talking about the doors that did open even amid the pain, Village. But majority of voices in the doc and the wave of follow-up interviews paint a picture of quiet battles with anxiety, body image issues, and trust problems that followed them into their 30s and 40s. Village. Support groups that started as private text chains in the early 2000s have evolved into full non-profit efforts by 2026, connecting survivors across seasons and offering resources for therapy and career coaching that the original production never provided. Village. The doc captures one such gathering, women who had never met in person, sitting in a circle, sharing stories that echo with the same themes of isolation and exploitation, Village. Their faces lit by laptop screens, showing old clips that now feel like evidence in a trial, Village. Tyra's attempt to soft launch a potential cycle 25 during her doc interviews backfires spectacularly. She drops hints about fresh ideas and updated formats, positioning it as evolution rather than repetition. But the public reaction is swift and unforgiving. Social media erupts with calls to boycott any revival, fans and critics alike pointing out that without systemic changes, the same patterns would simply rebrand themselves. Her team pushes back through carefully worded statements emphasizing growth and accountability, but the damage to the narrative is done. The doc ends on a note that feels deliberately unresolved, with split screens showing Tyra's measured responses alongside the raw pain in the eyes of the woman who lived it, leaving viewers to draw their own conclusions about whether the empire can ever truly be redeemed, or if it was always destined to be a cautionary tale. This is the layer that hits hardest when you step back and look at the full picture, after binging every episode of the doc twice like I did. Cross-referencing with old court whispers and deleted social media threads that fans preserved like digital artifacts. The cruelty was not confined to the house walls or the panel table. It followed these women into their real lives, shaping career paths, relationships, even the way they viewed their own reflections in the mirror. Hollywood watched the whole thing unfold in real time back then, profiting from the spectacle while turning a blind eye to the human cost. And now in 2026, the industry is finally being forced to reckon with it, because the survivors refuse to let the story fade into nostalgia. New lawsuits are being prepped in the wake of the doc's release, whispers of class action style filings that target not just the original production company, but the network that kept renewing the show year after year. The money that was made of their destruction is being scrutinized in ways it never was before, with calls for reparations in the form of mental health funds. and profit sharing that sound radical but feel overdue to the women who signed those one-sided contracts as wide-eyed 20-year-olds. The global versions of the show that spawned in dozens of countries carried the same DNA, and the doc touches on how those international editions amplified the problems without the same level of American scrutiny, leaving even more women with stories that may never fully surface. It is a web that stretches far beyond one host and one set of judges, touching every corner of the entertainment machine that sells dreams at the price of dignity. I have spent weeks poring over every frame of reality check, every leaked email that surfaced in its wake, every off-the-record conversation with people who were in those rooms when decisions were made that changed lives forever. The pattern is unmistakable. The motive was always the ratings, the control was always the brand, and the distraction was always the collateral that got written off as entertainment. But here is the thing that gives me a sliver of hope in all this darkness. The women who came through that machine are not staying silent anymore. They are organizing, they are testifying, they are demanding the kind of accountability that Hollywood rarely delivers unless the spotlight is this bright and the audience is this fed up. The docuseries did not fix anything on its own, but it cracked the door wide enough that the truth is flooding out, messy and uncomfortable, and long overdue. Tyra sits in her Malibu mansion today, empire intact on paper, but the narrative she built so carefully over 2 decades is being rewritten by the very voices she once directed. The smell of money still lingers, but now it is mixed with the sharp scent of reckoning, and the air in those old production offices must feel a lot different when the ghosts of every breakdown and every tear finally get to speak their piece. This is the raw truth we have been chasing all along, the one the industry tried to bury under glossy covers and empowerment slogans. It took a docuseries in 2026 to drag it into the light, but the real work of healing and changing the game is only just beginning. I am Strange, and on Dirty Hollywood we do not just expose the filth, we make sure it stays exposed until something actually changes. The stars can keep trying to bury their secrets, but as long as there are survivors willing to talk and audiences willing to listen, we will be right here digging them up one layer at a time. And that is the end of this episode, folks. If you made it all the way through this marathon of Hollywood rot, you are part of the reason these stories finally see the light. Smash that subscribe button if you are new here, turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop the next investigation, and drop a like if this one left you as stunned as it left me. In the comments below, tell me who you want me to go after next. Got insider info on another corner of the industry that needs exposing? Send it my way, 100% anonymity guaranteed, contacts are all in the description. Until next time, stay curious, stay ruthless, and remember, in this town the truth is always stranger than the fiction they sell you on screen. I am Strange, signing off from Dirty Hollywood. Catch you in the next one.